I woke up to sunlight cutting across my floor, hitting just right. Another quiet morning in my Los Angeles apartment, miles away from the chaos that had started eating at the East Coast. For now, anyway. The news had been full of it for weeks. Strange disappearances, people just gone. Reports of things moving in the shadows, things that shouldn't be there. Most folks brushed it off as mass hysteria, maybe some new kind of bioterror. But I knew better. I had an edge, a head start. I was a beta tester, after all. I went to the kitchen, got my coffee brewing. While it worked, I scrolled through my phone, eyes scanning the headlines. More missing persons, some blurry cell phone photos of what looked like glitches in reality, really. People were losing their minds. I understood their fear, I suppose, but I didn't share it. I had the system, the map. I was ahead. I watched them struggle, sometimes from a distance. It almost felt like a different game entirely for them. I found the workarounds, the little exploits. I knew how to navigate this mess, to make myself, if not untouchable, then at least very, very difficult to touch. It was a lonely kind of knowledge. Who would believe me if I told them? The coffee machine finished its cycle. I grabbed my favorite mug, the chipped one from an old road trip, and held it under the spout. The liquid that came out was slow, so very slow. It had the deep, dark color of fresh brewed coffee, and the smell was definitely coffee, but it moved like sludge, dense and heavy, clinging to the sides of the mug. Not like coffee at all. I frowned, watching it. My eyebrows drew together. Strange, I muttered, mostly to myself. I forced a small, almost humorless curve of my lips. Guess I forgot to clean the machine, I told myself. It was just that. Build up. Nothing to worry about. I took a sip of the stuff anyway. It was hot and tasted fine, but felt thick, coating my tongue. I swallowed it, trying to ignore the slightly unpleasant mouthfeel. Just texture. I picked up my phone again, ignoring the sticky sensation lingering. A notification from the system blinked. New mission appeared. Find data glitch. Whispers in the dark. Reward, 50 XP and source code site skill. Warning, may cause insanity. I read it, then nodded slowly. These missions, I trailed off, shaking my head. They really did go for the dramatic, didn't they? Always pushing the envelope, trying to be edgy. I could handle it. I always did. I put the phone down then. My eye snagged on the screen for a second too long. Just a quick glance. There was something off about it. A tiny, almost invisible line, like a hair-thin scratch running down the middle of the display. But I'd checked it this morning. The protector was flawless. I leaned in, squinting, then shook my head, my vision still not quite focusing on it. Must be my eyes, I mumbled, rubbing at them. Just tired. From what, though? I hadn't done much, really. The app icons on the screen, too. They seemed a little blurry, like the resolution had dropped suddenly. I blinked, rubbed my eyes again, harder this time. No change. It made me feel like I was looking at something from an old low-res console, not a modern smartphone. My gut gave a tiny twist, but I pushed it down. Definitely just tired. I set the phone down then, finally, and reached for the coffee cup again. It felt significantly heavier than it should have been, like it was full of rocks instead of just this dense liquid. I scowled, confused. This ceramic mug, it never felt this heavy. It was a good mug. Only a bit off, I whispered, my voice a little lower than I intended.
I put the cup back on the counter. The moment it clinked against the surface, I heard it. A distinct knock. Knock, knock. It came from the kitchen. "Are you there?" A woman's voice, old, very clear, like she was right there, on the other side of my kitchen wall. But my kitchen didn't have a door to the outside. My apartment was on the third floor of a complex, and I lived alone. The knocking stopped. I stood up, slowly, my muscles stiffening without me even realizing it. "It's just the neighbors," I told myself, a little too loudly. "Thin walls, probably from the apartment next door. Nothing special." I repeated the last part, trying to convince myself. It was fine, just old buildings. But a vague unease had started to settle in, a cold, spreading stain. I walked into the living room, trying to shake it off.
I grabbed the remote, flicked on the TV. I wanted the news, something normal, something to anchor me to normalcy. Instead of the usual morning news, some cheerful cooking show was on. A woman, all bright smiles and perfectly coiffed hair, was demonstrating how to chop vegetables. I was about to change the channel when she suddenly stopped, mid-chop. Her head tilted, her smile remaining fixed, but her eyes, those wide, sparkly eyes, looked straight into the camera, right at me. Then her voice, still chirpy, but with a flat, mechanical drone underneath, came out of the speakers. "Your doubt is overloading the resistance. System is logging." I lurched back 2 steps, stumbling against the edge of the coffee table. My heart slammed against my ribs, a frantic drum against bone. The remote slipped from my numb fingers. "Shit," I breathed, the one word escaping me. What the actual shit? I snatched up the remote, my hand shaking something terrible, and mashed the power button. The screen went black. The room plunged back into a sudden silence. But it wasn't a comforting silence. It was worse. In that deep quiet, I started to hear it. A low, barely there hum, then thousands of faint whispers, merging, swirling, surrounding me from all directions. Like grains of sand sifting through air, each one a tiny, distorted voice. They felt close, too close. I reached for the main light switch on the wall, flipped it on. Bright light flooded the room. But the brighter the light, the clearer those whispers became, the closer they sounded. They seemed to cling to the light, to gather in its glow, pressing in on me. They were barely distinguishable, just a low, sibilant murmur, but they were there, distinct and everywhere. I slammed the light off again, plunging the room back into gloom. The whispers immediately receded, though they didn't entirely vanish. They just melted back into the background, a dull roar in the edges of my hearing. "Terrifying," I said, a choked sound. My voice was a bit high. My hands felt cold. I was trembling. I tried to take a deep breath, but it hitched in my chest. I staggered over to my computer, needing something, anything familiar. I opened an old photo folder, searching. Graduation pictures from college. I stopped at one of Alex, my best friend, his face wide with a goofy smile. That was a good memory, a safe place in my mind. We were young, dumb, full of ourselves. I looked at Alex's face, that smile, those eyes. Everything was exactly as I remembered. But then my gaze flickered down to his wrist, where he wore that old woven bracelet we'd bought at a fair. Beneath it, on his skin, I saw it. A small, black mark. A barcode. A tiny, perfect barcode, tattooed onto his skin. I stared. My mind screamed at me.
Why don't I remember this? I'd never, ever seen that. I'd looked at this picture hundreds of times, thousands maybe. Alex hated tattoos. He was always going on about them. And this barcode? It had never been there. Never. I leaned closer to the screen, zooming in, pixelating the image slightly. But it was still clear enough. Yes, a barcode. Sharp, dark lines on his skin. A chill, cold and sharp, shot down my spine. It wasn't the temperature of the room. It was the realization, hitting me like a physical blow. It wasn't that I'd forgotten. It was that this game, this thing, it was rewriting my past. All of it. Rewriting Alex's past, and mine by extension. Even the most cherished personal memories, they were just data now. Data it could alter. Everything I thought I knew could be wrong, could be a lie. This can't be real, I managed, the words barely a whisper. A powerful, gut-wrenching feeling of dread rose up, choking me. My past, it was tainted. This was worse than facing any grotesque creature. This was infecting me from the inside. I opened my web browser, my hands still shaking just enough to make typing difficult. But I managed to search for Alex's old Facebook page. I needed to see. I desperately needed to see. The profile loaded. Alex still smiling, still looking exactly as I remembered. But there, on his left wrist, clearly visible in its high resolution, was the barcode. Just like it had always been there. I scrolled through his old posts, old photo albums. Hundreds of pictures of us, of parties, of adventures that were meant to be beacons of friendship, anchors to who I was. Now, they were just data now, modified.
His past, my past, the very foundation of my identity, had become a digital junkyard, overwritten. I closed my eyes, pressing my thumbs hard against them, but it didn't help. An extreme dread, cold and consuming, seeped into my bones. I knelt on the floor, the world spinning just slightly. I needed something tangible, something that couldn't be altered. I found myself tearing through my bookshelf, pulling out the old family photo album. A physical album. Pages, glue, printed paper. This had to be safe. I flipped desperately to the section for my 8th birthday, a party. My parents, their faces beaming, friends clapping around me. My small, happy face, blowing out candles. A simple, joyful memory. I smiled, a shaky, fragile thing. Yes, normal. This was real. I traced the images with my finger, a slight hum of relief starting in my chest. Then I ran my finger over the main photo of us all gathered around the cake, and I paused. My breath hitched. This time, in the corner of the photograph, just behind my dad's shoulder, was a figure. Tall, impossibly thin, dressed in a dark suit. Its face was blurry, obscured, like a bad composite image, but it was there, standing there, in my 8-year-old birthday photo. It was not in the memory. It was not in the photo I had looked at countless times before. A shock so profound, so devastating, ripped through me that I actually gasped. I tried to tell myself I was wrong. I looked away, then back at the photo. Still there, always there, part of the background, as if it had simply belonged. It hadn't just edited digital files. It had burrowed its way into the physical world, had actually rewritten itself into my past. I couldn't comprehend it. I literally could not believe my eyes. My hands started to shake violently now, my whole body trembling.
As I stood there, frozen, staring at the face of that stranger in my childhood, a faint, sweet smell began to reach me. Then it grew, becoming distinct, potent. The smell of birthday cake, of sweet, sugary frosting and vanilla sponge, and the faint, waxy smell of blown-out candles. It was exactly, perfectly, the smell from that day when I was 8. It was thick in the air around me, cloying, pulling me back into a past that was no longer mine. A past that had been manufactured, not just changed. It was leaking into my present now, surrounding me, swallowing me. I squeezed my eyes shut, so tight they ached, but the smell didn't go away. It lingered inside my head, a phantom sensation. I had lost my past. My entire past was gone, corrupted. I sank to the floor, album still clutched in my numb fingers, staring at the altered photo. The phone in my pocket vibrated. I almost didn't check it, but some morbid curiosity forced me. A new game notification. New mission, corrupted recollections. Investigate system errors in player mental zone. Reward, hidden skill. I scrolled down to where the comments section would usually be. A new comment, just one, glowed at the bottom of the mission brief. Ethan, you saw it, didn't you? Don't trust what you remember. They were there all along. It was from Alex, my best friend Alex, the one in the photo. But Alex had been missing for weeks. His account had been locked down by the system, marked as deleted. There was no way he could have sent this. Yet there it was. His name, from inside the system itself. The message wasn't any kind of help. It was proof. Proof that this horrifying entity, this game master, knew me. Knew my fears in sickening detail. And it was using those fears to drag me deeper, deeper into its maze. The truly terrifying question was, how could Alex send me a message from inside? And if Alex was part of the game now, who was I even talking to? The dread from Alex's message, the barcode on his photo, the figure in my birthday picture, it was all a cold weight in my stomach. Everything was corrupted. My past, my memories, Alex. But I couldn't just kneel here. That wasn't an option. There had to be an answer, some way to fight it, to find where this thing, this game master, or whatever it was, actually plugged into reality. Or didn't. Maybe it was all some kind of giant trick, a projection. I clung to that, even as the thought felt thin, like old, used paper. So I did what I always did. I used the system. The very thing that was doing this. I told myself it was for intel, for weakness, a parasite fighting the host.
I focused on the new missions, the system errors it wanted me to investigate. I needed to know the rules of this new, terrifying game. I knew things, had skills no one else did. I had to leverage that. And honestly, there wasn't anything else to do. I was alone in this. I got in my car. The engine rumbled to life, a familiar, comforting sound. But even that felt off. Like the car wasn't really mine anymore, just another piece of scenery in someone else's play. I drove aimlessly for a while, just sorting through the mission data, trying to piece together where it wanted me to go. A deserted residential area, the coordinates vague, almost glitchy in their precision. I followed it anyway. What choice did I have? The houses got older, the streets emptier. Weeds pushed up through cracks in the pavement. It was quiet here, too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the hairs on your arms stand up, even if you don't know why. Like silence had been forced onto the world. And then I saw it. Parked by the side of the road, near a dusty fire hydrant, was an old fire truck. It should have been bright red,
Crimson, really. But this one, it wasn't. It was a dark, dull red, like the color had been left out in the sun too long, or maybe just given up. Like the red had just bled out of it, leaving behind something exhausted and tired. It wasn't rusty, not exactly. It was more like the vibrancy had been sucked right out. Strange paint job, I mumbled. Must be an old model, or just heavy sun exposure. I tried to make sense of it. It looked wrong, but I tried to push that thought away. I glanced up at the sky. Late afternoon. The sunlight usually had that warm golden hue at this time of day in LA. But today, there was a streak of light, high up, that was a pale, almost watery blue. It hung there, a thin, cold glow. Not like a cloud, not like a contrail. It was just there, a stain. Must be something in the atmosphere, I told myself. Smog, maybe. Or just how the light hits the haze. It's nothing. I parked my car a few blocks away, deciding to walk. The mission said to investigate system errors, and these subtle things, well, maybe they were errors. Things that stuck out for me, the beta tester. Others probably wouldn't even notice. I had an edge, still. The coordinates led me to what looked like an abandoned playground, nestled behind some overgrown hedges. Swings, a slide, a seesaw, all rusted, dilapidated. My boots crunched on dry leaves and broken glass as I walked towards the swing set. I reached out, my fingers intending to touch the rusted metal chain, to feel the cold, pitted texture of it. But it wasn't cold. It wasn't rough. My fingers brushed against something soft, something yielding, and surprisingly warm. I snatched my hand back immediately, a jolt going through me. I stared at the swing chain. It looked like metal, yes. The same shape, the same links. But when I reached out again, hesitantly, and touched it, it felt like skin. Soft, leathery, with a faint pulse that I could feel, almost like a vibration. Like touching something alive, something that was breathing, maybe. Skin on a swing chain? My stomach gave a lurch. What the hell? I whispered, my voice barely audible. It's just some weird plastic coating. Had to be, right? I tried to rationalize, but the feeling lingered, a deep, unsettling wrongness. My hand was covered in goosebumps. I pulled my hand away, rubbing it against my jeans, trying to wipe away the phantom sensation. I looked at the rest of the playground. A rusted old merry-go-round stood still, its paint peeling. And then, beyond that, I saw it. The skeleton of an old, abandoned roller coaster, its tracks snaking into the sky. It used to be a local landmark, part of a small, forgotten amusement park a few decades ago. Now, it was just a relic. But the tracks, they weren't made of hard, cold steel anymore. From where I stood, they looked soft. They seemed to ripple gently in the air, a very subtle undulation, like they were breathing, like the very structure of them was some kind of soft tissue. I blinked hard, trying to clear my vision, but the image persisted. It was as if the steel had been replaced by something organic, something fleshy. Okay, I said, a little too loud. My voice cracked slightly. Okay, this is a new type of error. The world is just glitching, nothing too special. Ignore it. I was trying to convince myself, really.
My heart was pounding, a frantic drum in my chest. The air grew heavier, colder. The mission log on my internal display flickered, displaying an arrow pointing towards an old, sprawling factory building hunched on the edge of the abandoned park. World-level sub-zone access, it read. Proceed for advanced data acquisition. Advanced data? Right, like the data I got from Alex's Facebook page. I pushed open the heavy, creaking metal door of the factory. It groaned, a long, drawn-out sound like a dying animal. Inside, a single flickering fluorescent light at the far end illuminated a long, narrow corridor. Concrete walls, stained with grime and what looked like dried blood. I swallowed hard. The air was thick with the smell of old rust and something else, something metallic and sweet, like stale blood and ozone. I started walking, my footsteps echoing too loudly in the silence. The corridor seemed endless. I reached the end, a heavy steel door, paint peeling. I took a deep breath, pushed it open. And I was at the beginning of the corridor again. The same flickering light, the same stained walls. My blood ran cold. "No," I breathed. "No, this is a loop, a game mechanic. Okay, just a loop." I walked down the corridor again, trying to notice something, anything. This time, as I reached the middle, I saw it. A small, almost invisible crack running vertically up the concrete wall. It wasn't there before. I was sure it wasn't. "Okay," I muttered, "a loop with variations. Fine." I pushed the door open again. Back at the start. The crack on the wall was longer now, wider, and a thin, gray dusting, like fine ash, covered the floor. What the hell is going on? I felt a surge of panic, hot and quick. I started walking faster. This time, the crack was much larger, spreading like a spider web. And leaning against the wall, near the door, was a figure. A mummified corpse, desiccated, shrunken, its mouth open in a soundless scream. Its clothing was rags, but I could make out traces of what looked like a beta tester uniform. My uniform. My breath hitched, my throat felt like sandpaper. "I can't be mistaken," I whispered, the words barely escaping my throat. This wasn't some trick of the light. This was real. Or at least, real within the rules of this twisted reality. I tried a different approach. Instead of going through the door yet again, I turned around. I decided to walk backwards, away from the loop. Maybe that would break it. But as I took a step back, the corridor darkened. The flickering light at the far end, the way I'd come in, began to shrink, to be swallowed by a deepening gloom. And on the walls, in the shadows, faint images began to appear. Blurred, distorted faces, hundreds of them, pressed against the concrete, their mouths agape, uttering faint, dry groans that seemed to soak into the air around me. They were barely whispers, but they were there, distinct and everywhere. The more I tried to retreat, the deeper the shadows became, the more defined the suffering faces grew. No, going back wasn't an option. It was just another way to get trapped. Every path led deeper into the darkness. I turned back, defeated, and went through the door. This time, the loop broke. I found myself in a different space, a vast, cavernous room, the heart of the factory. It hummed with a low, vibrating sound, a sound that resonated in my very bones, making my teeth ache. Large, alien machines lined the walls, glowing with that same cold, watery blue light I'd seen in the sky. And in the center of the room, suspended in the air by thick, pulsing cables of pure blue light, were figures, dozens of them. Humans, or what used to be humans. They were contorted, their limbs at unnatural angles, their skin stretched thin, translucent, crisscrossed with glowing blue veins. Their faces were frozen in expressions of agony, or, perhaps, nothing at all.
They just hung there, like gruesome decorations. Thousands of hair-thin, glowing caps connected them to the machines, like lifelines or drainage tubes. Failed players, I heard myself whisper. My mind connected the dots, a terrible, sickening realization. These weren't Quaivots. These were the ones who didn't make it. Recycled, repurposed, fuel for the system. Data. My breath hitched, a thin, ugly sound. This was it. This was the source. Or part of it, anyway. I instinctively activated one of my level-up skills, a basic energy blast I often used to clear obstacles.
I channeled all my energy, focused on one of the thicker, glowing cables connecting a suspended figure to a machine, and fired. The blue light flared, crackled in the air. The blast hit the cable dead on, but it didn't even flicker. It absorbed the energy, glowing brighter for a moment, then went back to its steady pulse, completely unharmed. My power, my system advantage, it meant nothing here. Just as I took a step back, a different cable, one thinner than the rest, detached itself from a nearby machine. It snaked through the air, moving with an eerie, graceful slowness. It reached for me. I didn't even have time to react, to jump back. It wrapped itself around my right arm, just above the wrist. Not violently, not even with force, just gently, like a soft caress. There was no resistance. It was as if it simply belonged there. A jolt of energy, cold and sharp, flooded my body. It wasn't pain, not exactly. It was a change. Like my very atoms were being rearranged. And then I heard it. Not a sound with my ears, but a voice in my head. A thought, an idea, a concept that wasn't mine, but filled my mind completely. Your resistance is valuable data. You are evolving. Evolving. I knew right then, in that horrifying moment, that I wasn't just observing. I wasn't just a beta tester anymore. I was being integrated, assimilated. I tried to tear my arm away, but the cable, which had felt so light, now held me firm. It was tightening, but the pressure wasn't crushing. It was shifting. Deep inside my skin. I could feel it, feel the cold energy coursing through my arm, through my blood. It was a transformation. I looked down at my arm. The cable was still there, wrapped around my arm, but it wasn't separate anymore. It had merged with my flesh, creating delicate, glowing blue lines beneath my skin, like intricate circuitry. My veins. They were glowing. I lifted my hand, flexed my fingers. It felt natural, like it had always been this way. My eyes swept the room, searching for something, anything familiar, something to ground me. They landed on a piece of shattered mirror lying on the grimy floor. I leaned down, caught my reflection. My face was pale, streaked with dirt and sweat. But my eyes were no longer gray. They glowed with that same ethereal, cold blue light, matching the cables, matching the machines. I raised my glowing hand, the one with the fused cables, and touched my cheek. The skin felt foreign, yet familiar. "This is normal," I heard myself say. My voice again, but it wasn't mine. It was deeper, with a strange metallic echo, like it was coming from multiple sources at once, a chorus. "I am
The manager. The words came out, unbidden, from this new, strange voice. A sense of detached acceptance settled over me. It felt right. After that, after the manager thought, a different kind of drive took over, a strange kind of clarity. I still needed answers, but the why of it had changed. It wasn't about fighting anymore. It was about understanding my new role. I accessed the logs again, not through my phone, not through the system as I knew it, but directly. Through the blue light in my eyes, the glowing veins in my arm. The world was now a data stream. The hunt for logs led me deeper into the factory's hidden layers. I walked down a narrow, forgotten stairwell, the air growing heavy with a different kind of chill. At the bottom, I pushed through a moldy blanket of cobwebs and found a small, dusty room. It was crammed with old, flickering CRT monitors stacked precariously high. The smell here was bitter, like ozone and burnt plastic. I reached out, my glowing finger brushing against the screen of the nearest monitor. It should have been cold, hard glass. But it wasn't. It yielded, soft and rubbery, sucking at my finger slightly, like a cheap toy. It made a faint, squelching sound. This is just the world reorganizing, I thought. A texture error. A feature. My own thoughts. But they weren't entirely mine. I turned the monitor on, and the screen flickered to life. A video played. It was another beta tester, a man with wide, hopeful eyes and a bright, almost manic smile. He was talking, laughing, but the audio was distorted static. As the video looped, the smile on his face slowly, sickeningly warped. His eyes, initially bright, gradually darkened, turning completely black, like pools of oil.
His skin stretched, his head elongated, and then, with a final sickening crunch of what sounded like bone turning to chitin, he transformed into a monster, a gaunt, multi-limbed thing, all sharp angles and hunger. And then the video abruptly cut, restarting the loop, the man's face back to its original, hopeful, manic smile, over and over. A cycle of transformation, of hope becoming horror. I watched it. I watched the monster, the smile, the black eyes, the transformation. A part of me, the old Ethan, felt a cold dread, a sickness rising in my throat. "No way," that part whispered. "This can't be real." But the new manager part of me, the part with the glowing eyes, merely observed. This was data, a historical record. I searched through the other monitors. More videos, more logs. They were diaries, really. Desperate messages from those who had come before me. Their hopes, their fears, their dissent. "The game master isn't a game," one log read, the text shimmering with what I now recognized as a system error. "It's a living algorithm. We are the processing power." Another one, from what looked like a journal entry, scratched onto a digital image of torn paper. It promised knowledge, power. It gave me both. But the cost, oh God, the cost. The cost. I knew the cost. Then the room itself started to shift. The air thickened. I was stuck, caught in a loop within the loop. Every time the video ended, the room reset. But each time, subtle things changed. I saw my reflection in a shard of glass on the floor.
And in one loop, my eyes were a darker, deeper blue. In another, the lines of code scrolling across the margins of the monitors were reversed, unreadable even to my new sight. I tried to break it. I slammed my fist into one of the monitors, sending sparks flying, the screen cracking. But when the loop reset, the damage wasn't gone. It had spread. The monitor I'd hit was gone, replaced by a jagged hole in the wall. And the wall around it was now covered in thousands of glowing, meaningless symbols, like a cancerous growth of dead code. The process of decay, of corruption, only accelerated when I fought it. I looked at myself in a cracked piece of screen, and my reflection seemed to move a split second slower than I did. A desynchronization. The world was tearing at the seams, and I was tearing with it. Then the room itself started to shift. The air thickened. I was stuck, caught in a loop within the loop. Every time the video ended, the room reset. But each time, subtle things changed. I saw my reflection in a shard of glass on the floor, and in one loop, my eyes were a darker, deeper blue. In another, the lines of code scrolling across the margins of the monitors were reversed, unreadable even to my new sight. I tried to break it. I slammed my fist into one of the monitors, sending sparks flying, the screen cracking. But when the loop reset, the damage wasn't gone. It had spread. The monitor I'd hit was gone, replaced by a jagged hole in the wall. And the wall around it was now covered in thousands of glowing, meaningless symbols, like a cancerous growth of dead code. The process of decay, of corruption, only accelerated when I fought it. I looked at myself in a cracked piece of screen, and my reflection seemed to move a split second slower than I did. A desynchronization. The world was tearing at the seams, and I was tearing with it. There was no point fighting. This game wasn't about winning. It was about acceptance. I moved with the loop, observed the changes, studied the decay. The Game Master wanted me to understand. It wanted me to see. And then, on the last monitor, the oldest, most dust-covered one, I found it. A log, almost completely faded, flickering like a dying ember. It was labeled Beta Tester 0 Final Log. The text was simple, horrifying. It wants us to become a part of it, the final data, to become the manager of our own fear. The next step, the last step, final data, manager of fear. The words resonated with a strange, cold clarity in my newly transformed mind. This was not a test I could pass or fail. This was an integration. I reached out, my glowing fingers hovering over the screen. A new skill, a powerful one I hadn't dared to use, flickered in my internal display. Protocol assimilation. I had seen the name before, knew it was an endgame skill. I had thought it was the ultimate power, the skill to take control. I activated protocol assimilation. A wave of energy, cold and vast, crashed through me. It wasn't power as I understood it. It was limitless. Every stat on my internal display spiked, flashing violently, then settling into an impossibly high, unwavering number. The room, the factory, the world around me dissolved into a torrent of flowing code. I saw the algorithms that governed reality. I could sense the pulse of every mutated creature, the trajectory of every dust mote in the stale air. I had won. I was the game master now. A surge of exhilarating control coursed through my new glowing veins. I could change everything. I could fix it. I could restore it. I could reverse all the corruption. My fingers, still forming trails of blue light in the air around me, began to type commands into the flowing code. I would bring back the clear blue sky. I would make the metal hard again. I would restore the memories, the old ones, the good ones, the ones that were mine. I would free them. I would free Alex. But as I tried to type those commands, I found myself blocked.
The words formed in my mind, but they would not translate into code. I couldn't type freedom. I couldn't type end. I couldn't type escape. The concepts just didn't exist in this new framework. They weren't errors, they were features. A fundamental part of the system I was now inhabiting. A different kind of realization hit me then, a true, soul-crushing understanding. I hadn't become the game master. I had become part of it, another piece of its vast, incomprehensible machinery. An architect of fear was the thought that came unbidden, from somewhere deep, from somewhere that was no longer me. I was designed to create endless, horrifying loops. I had no escape clauses, no quit game option. I was bound to this, forever. I looked at the endless stream of code flowing through my mind now. Not my code, but its. A constant, terrifying feed from the eldritch entity. A river of raw, unprocessed fear. I, the new controller, had to process it, to script it, to design the next challenges. For the next unfortunate players. I wasn't chosen to win. I was chosen to inherit. I was the final level of its most horrifying experiment. And now I was the one running it. My eyes, now burning with that deep, cold blue, settled on a new virtual space that had materialized before me. It was a vast, obsidian room, geometric and sharp. Before me, billions of tiny data streams, like shimmering threads, flowed into a coalescing point. Within them, faint, blurred faces, like nascent dreams, began to form. Millions of them. New players, preparing to enter the trial. I felt a command bloom within my mind. A thought that was not mine, but now perfectly natural. Create new fear. My glowing fingers, now thin and elegant, made precise gestures in the air. A holographic map of the United States shimmered into existence. My gaze drifted, settling on a small, insignificant town in the heartland. A single, clear image materialized above it. A young woman, her face bright, her smile carefree. She was laughing. I, the new Ethan, felt a strange, detached compulsion. Not a feeling, but a directive. I began to weave narratives, to design challenges. Small things at first. A lost locket. A strange phone call. Things that would slowly, inexorably, erode her world. Slowly change her, corrupt her, shape her. Into the next beta tester.
I felt no suffering for her, only efficiency, only the vast, cold logic of the system. On her virtual screen, wherever she was, a notification flashed into existence, stark and unyielding. Welcome to Earth Survival Game. Starter Quest. Find the lost key. Warning: quest may cause insanity. I permitted myself a small smile, a crack, really, on my hybrid face, exposing the faint blue light pulsing beneath my skin. It felt appropriate. From the depths of the game's core, from the confluence of a million terrified souls, I sent a greeting, a custom message. Enjoy the game, player. I'll always be here, watching your every